video that you were to watch, I believe it was Thursday or Friday or maybe both, I don't know, was on absolute values. And tonight's video is about descriptive modeling and accuracy. So you're going to just be a little bit ahead. We'll go over it in class, and then that'll make the video even easier to watch when you go over it. But I just want to do some practice problems with you guys. So evaluate each expression. First of all, do you guys know what absolute value symbols mean?
How far it's away from zero.
How far a number is away from zero on the number line. So if you think about a number line, let me pull up that IP real quick so I can write on my board. So if you think about a number line, and I look at two numbers on it. Let's look at 2 and -2. How far away from 0 is 2 on the number line? It is 2 units away. 2 units from 0. Okay, if I look at -2, it's still only 2 units away. I wouldn't say it's -2 units from 0, would I? I would just say the distance is 2 units from 0 on the number line. 2 units away from 0. So that's what absolute value is. It's asking for a distance. So when I write it, I write it using these symbols, like big lines. The absolute value of x is how far whatever value I plug in is from 0. So when I do the absolute value of 2, how far is 2 away from 0? It's 2 units. The absolute value of -2, how far away from 0 is -2? It's 2 units. So whether it's 2 or it's a -2, when I talk about a distance, it comes out as a positive. Okay, so we're going to evaluate the following expression. It says m equals -4, n equals 1, p equals 2, q equals -6, r equals 5, and t equals -2. So looking at this very first one, all we're going to do is rewrite the problem. And instead of putting in, I'm going to put in what n is equal to. So then 1 minus 2. In place of m, I'm going to put what n is equal to. n is equal to -4, right? Why do you think I put it in parentheses? What would happen if I didn't put it in parentheses? It'd be 2 minus 4, exactly. When I put it in parentheses, that shows me that I'm doing 2 times the -4. Does that make sense? Okay, and then last, we've got our p. Well, our p is 2. So I'm going to put in a 2. So now we can evaluate. Order of operations tells me to do parentheses first. There's really nothing to simplify in my parentheses. Exponents second. I have no exponents. So next comes multiply or divide. So I'm going to multiply. What's -2 times a -4? Positive 8. A negative times a double negative makes it positive. So positive 8 times 2 is 16. So I have a positive 16 now. So 1 plus 16, because it's a positive, does that make sense of why I got rid of the negative? A negative times a negative makes it a positive. Positive times another positive makes it a positive 16. So 1 plus 16 is 17. Oh, look, I forgot something. What did I forget at the beginning of my problem? The negative. So that's going to change my outcome. -1 plus 16 is 15. So this is my answer. All right. Now, the negative this time is outside of the absolute values. This one was inside, so we went ahead and worked it out inside of it. So I'm just going to ignore this negative out here until the very end of my problem. Let's go ahead and plug it in. Tell me what to write. 10 minus 7 5. -4. It's going to be times 2. Anytime they're side by side here, this implies multiplication. Of course, you're thinking it's a positive 2, right? The 2 times a positive 2. All right, so now let's go ahead and evaluate. We'll go through and do my multiplication first. I've got 10 minus 35 minus, what is that, 32? Plus 4. Drop everything else straight down. Now I add or subtract, whichever comes first as I move left or right. So 10 minus 35 is negative 25. Negative 25 minus 32 is negative 57. Negative 57 plus 4 is negative 53. So I've got a negative outside the absolute value, then the absolute value of a negative 53. How far is 0, or how far is negative 53 from 0 on the number line? 53 units. So when I evaluate this part right here, it comes out as a 53. That negative is outside of there. So then it comes down beside it. So my final answer is negative 53. Does that make sense? I see kids a lot of times say, oh, it's a double negative, so it's a positive. It doesn't work that way with absolute values. We look at this and say, how far is this negative 53 from 0? It's 53 units. Then attach that negative. All right, so looking at the next one, tell me what to write. Okay. So following order of operations, we go to the innermost set of parentheses first. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Negative 4 and negative 6 make negative 10. Fine. I'm going to go ahead and multiply this because I can. Okay, so negative, we could go ahead and do that multiplication, get negative 70. Negative 14 and negative 6 make negative 20, right? Negative 20 plus negative 70 makes negative 90, right? So then I've got a negative 90. What's that going to equal? Negative 90. Is that okay with everybody? I feel like I sound really, really muffled. Can you hear me okay? Okay. All right. So I'm going to delete the ink off this page and go to our next slide. All right. A teacher compares the ratio of the number of questions answered correctly to the total number of questions on a test as a metric. For a student to earn an A or a B on the test, the ratio must be greater than or equal to 83. Let's think about what a ratio looks like. A ratio is like division, right? We've got a number over top of a number. So it says the ratio of number of questions answered correctly. So this is correctly over the total number of questions must be greater than or equal to 0.83. How do I show greater than or equal to? Yes, perfect. Air drew this. This has to be greater than or equal to 0.83. The last test had 40 questions. So where's that one go? At the the bottom, there were a total of 40 questions. Using the metric, what is the least number of questions a student can answer correctly and still earn a B or higher? I'm going to put in an X here. X divided by 40 is greater than or equal to 0.83. You guys know how you would solve this? I need to get this X all by itself. What's happening to X right now? Divided. It's being divided. So to undo that division, I use multiplication. So if I times this side by 40 to get rid of that, I also have to come over here and times this side by 40. So that's going to get me my X all by itself. So my X has to be greater than or equal to, when I plug this in the calculator, I get 33.2. Now let's think about this. If it's a test and you get marked right or wrong, there's no partial credit, is there any way that I can answer 33.2 questions correctly? No. So what should I put here to show that if it says X is greater than or equal to 32? How many questions must they get right then? 34. So they have to score X is greater than or equal to 34, right? 34, then you get 34 right, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, or 40. Any of these, if they get any of these number of questions correct, then they're going to have a B or higher. Does that make sense to everybody? So what happens if they get 33 questions right? It's going to be lower than a B, because they had to have exactly 33.2 questions right to get a B or higher. So if they get 33, that's less than that. That means they're going to have probably a C, right? It's going to be below a B average. So this is using a metric is what this is talking about. All right. And next is our debt to income. Have you guys ever heard about debt to income ratio? Probably not something that you've ever had to deal with yet in your life, but maybe your parents have. I know last summer I bought a new truck, and I don't know about you guys, but I don't have enough money to, well, okay, I'm sure you guys don't either because you're in high school. So I don't know about your parents. Maybe your parents are a whole lot richer than me. Maybe they're like me. I had to borrow money to buy my truck. I did not have cash money to go buy a brand new truck hot off the lot at Glockner's. So when I went through the process of buying a truck, I'd never bought a new vehicle in my entire life. This is the first time ever at the ripe age of 32 years old. I go in and I had to take in pay stubs showing how much money I make. They ran a credit report. A credit report pulls like if you have credit cards, if you owe for a house, if you owe for another vehicle, if you pay your bills on time, or if you pay them late, it gets reported to this credit bureau. So they run that credit score and it tells them how much debt I have. Well, if your debt to income ratio is too high, then the bank knows that you're not going to be able to afford to pay the money back that you borrowed. Does that make sense? So let's say that my debt to income ratio was, well, let's just say that I have $1,800 worth of debt each month, and I only make $1,900 a month. That means I'm only getting $100 to live off of, right? That's not feasible. That's not smart. And they know that I'm not going to be able to live off of that, so therefore I'm not going to be paying my debt, so they're not going to loan me money. Does that make sense? So that's what debt to income ratio is, and the way that they do this is by looking at how much money you earn and how much money you owe. That's your debt to income ratio. I said them backwards. How much you owe goes on top. How much you earn, that's the total. Total is almost always in the bottom, unless it tells you otherwise. So you've got the money that you owe over the total money that you earn. Total income equals your debt to income ratio. So it says an individual earns $3,200 a month. This same individual has monthly expenses totaling $2,000. What is their debt to income ratio? Get rid of this. So how would I set that up? Perfect. 2,000 divided by 3,200. I can see that those would cancel. So now if I could just mentally calculate 20 over 32, I can see they're both divisible by 4. So that would be 5 over 8. Does anyone know what 5/8 is as a decimal? I don't know either. It's 0.625. I looked at it earlier. 0.625. So basically what that's saying is 62.5% of my income is spent on my debt. That might be a house payment, that might be credit cards, that might be a truck payment, whatever. This isn't necessarily me, this is just made up numbers. I just made it up off the top of my head. I'm not saying it's me. But I would not have that much debt being a math teacher, just saying I'd have a heart attack. But this person has 62.5% of their income going to their debt. Does that make sense? This, however, is the debt to income ratio, 0.625. So not something that you might care too much about now, but you'll care about it at some point in your life. All right. Now this is one you might care about. Snacks. Let's say I have 12 snacks. I want to divide them evenly among 9 students. This is what the calculator shows. How many snacks can I give each person? Clearly, everybody's going to get one whole snack, but what does 0.3 repeating mean? Let's think about it visually. I've got 9 people, so here's, oops. Might help if I click on my pen. I've got person 1, person 2, person 3, person 4, person 5, person 6, person 7, person 8, and person 9. Clearly, they're going to get one whole candy bar each, right? How many candy bars am I going to have left if I just gave away 9 of my 12? I've got 3 whole candy bars left. So I've got 3 candy bars left to divide among 9 people. Let's think about this. If I have 3 candy bars and I want to give it to 9 people, how many pieces would I have to break each candy bar into? 3. So take one of these candy bars, distribute it amongst these 3 people, so they each get a third, right? So now I'm down to 2 candy bars. I take the second candy bar and I divide it evenly among 3 people. So they each get a third. They each get a third. And then I'm down to 1 candy bar. So I take that last candy bar and divide it among these last 3 people. And they each get a third. So every person gets 1 1/3 pieces of candy. Or, since there is the coronavirus and nobody wants me breaking up their candy bar and touching it, everybody gets 1 candy bar and I get 3. That's what's really going to happen. No, I'm just kidding. Does that make sense though? So 0.3 repeating is the same as 1/3. And you will see this over and over and over and over again. 0.6 repeating. What do you think it's the same as? 2/3. Since it's just this doubled, it's 2/3. that make sense? And these are fractions that you will see over and over again. All right. Fundraising. This is our last problem of the day. And it's talking about reasonable levels of accuracy. Sometimes in life we're presented with problems where we can't give an exact answer. I can't tell you exactly how much money is in my purse, but I can give you a reasonable estimate. Let's say I know that I withdrew $100 from the bank, and I spent like $13 and some odd cents at the gas station. Just making stuff up off the top of my head. So 100 minus 13 some odd cents. I don't know exactly, but I'm going to assume I've got more than $80, right? Does that make sense? Because I didn't spend 20, so that's a reasonable estimate of how much money is in my purse. Roughly 80 bucks. I'm going to have a little bit more than that because I only spent 13, but that's an estimate within an accurate estimate. If I said, well, I've got at least $50 in my purse, is that very accurate, knowing that I only spent 13? No, that's not very precise. Really, 80 is not that precise. I could say 87, right? Or 85. 85 would be very precise, be more precise. Okay, so this says the Key Club sold 20 umbrellas for $25 each. How would I calculate how much money they just earned? They sold 20 umbrellas, $25 each. How do I figure out that total? Times. Okay, so I've got 20 times the $25 each. They sold almost all of the 50 Key Club keychains for $3 each. How would I show that? $50 times 3, okay? We don't know how many, but almost all of them. So we're just going to roughly estimate. All 50 of them for $3 each. And then received 3 donations averaging $7.50 each. So how would I write that? Perfect. So it says determine how much money the Key Club collected within a reasonable level of accuracy. So if I were to multiply this, I can see really quickly this one's 150. Let's see here. 25 doubled is 50. Is that right? 500 plus 150 is 650. And then 350, or 3 times 750. I don't know, I'll have to do the math here. 15, carry my 1, 21, 22, so 2250. All I did was order of operations multiplied first. Now, if I add all those together, I'm going to get 672.5. Do you think that's a reasonable level of accuracy? If you were rounding, would you say, I've got $672.50 in my purse? Or would you probably say something like, I've got about $675, or maybe even $670? Because notice, we don't know that they sold all of the keychains. It says almost all, the keyword there. We don't know that they got exactly $7.50 each. They may have gotten more than that, and it just averaged out to $7.50. Does that make sense? So between these things not being exact amounts, that gives us some leeway to estimate. So I would say we earned roughly $675. Would be a quick estimate. Does that make sense? It's within a reasonable level of accuracy. Now, if I said, looking at this number, said we raised about $1,000, is that reasonable? No. If I said, we only raised 500, is that reasonable? No. Because we know we raised really close to this, give or take some money. There could have been a little bit more, there could be a little bit less, but right around $675. All right. so that takes care of today's lesson. The vocabulary test that I gave you guys last week, I don't know what happened with it, but for some reason, some people took it and then it wouldn't let them submit their answers. And some people took it and used their book, and some people took it and didn't. Honestly, I didn't really care if you used your book because I just wanted you practicing the vocabulary. But I ended up not putting those scores in progress book because there were so many problems across the board with it. I think what happened was I had put it on locked mode, and locked mode doesn't work very well outside of the school. So anyway, that was just good practice for your upcoming chapter test. And so you can go back in and practice some more. I also made a Quizlet with all of the vocabulary words on it. So I highly recommend that you be practicing that. I'm sorry. The Quizlet does not have all the vocabulary words. The Quizlet only has a few of them on there. I recommend you make a Quizlet. And I'm going to show you real quick how to find your vocabulary words. There was some question about that as well. All right, so just a reminder, again, if we go into Google Classroom, go under the classwork tab. Here it says Algebra 1 lesson plans. This is this week's activities. Under Algebra 1 lesson plan, I click on that, and there are the key vocabulary words from the beginning on. So I scroll down. Here's some vocabulary words. Here's vocabulary words. Here's vocabulary words. And then there's no new ones for this week. So I would highly recommend looking those up and practicing those. Make sure that you know them for your chapter test, which will be next week. This is the last lesson in this chapter that you're going to watch today for homework, and then you have an exit ticket to complete on Google Classroom. The rest of this week, what I would like for you to do is log on to Alex, make sure you're completing your 10 topics, and work on the Module 1 study guide that's posted on McGraw-Hill. So again, if you forget how to get on McGraw-Hill, I'm going to show you. Go back into Google Classroom, click the 9 dots, scroll down to McGraw-Hill, log in. I'm sure some of you are getting sick of this, but I just want to make sure everybody remembers. Launch your textbook, and then it should be right here under assignments. You should see this. It might look a little different than mine, but does it show up right there on the front under the calendar? Okay, you've got the Module 1 review. So you're going to start working on that. You will have a test next week when you come in on Monday. So make sure that you are studying and you are completing your study guide. There won't be any surprises. Everything that's on the study guide is game for the test. Okay? If you know how to do the things on the study guide and you know the vocabulary words, you will be able to get an A on the test. You guys have any questions for me? All right, I'm going to stop our recording.